So Tucker Carlson went on Breaking Points to do an interview. Now, unfortunately, it was just Sagar doing the interview. That's a shame only because Crystal sort of has a track record of being pretty aggressive and asking very incisive questions against whoever the hell she's interviewing, whether she likes them or not. In the case of Tucker, she doesn't like him. But it would have been nice to have Tucker pressed on what's the most obvious question in the world, which is, hey man, remember when we got the leaks from the Dominion lawsuit and internally via text and email, you were telling all the other Fox News hosts how much you despise Donald Trump? Remember when you said there's literally nothing positive that came out of the Trump era, nothing at all? Remember when you said you hate him with a burning passion? Remember when you said he's a destroyer? All he does is break things and mess things up. Well, how can you square that with the fact that now you're back on the Trump train, getting back on that bandwagon and effectively sucking him off and endorsing him for this next race? How do you square those things? Because what it appears to be from an objective eye is that you're a little grifter and a little sycophant, and you're trying to ride the wave of Trump's popularity. And you realize, hey, I can't really buck this orthodoxy and go for DeSantis because that's kind of embarrassing now. So now you're just, falling in line. Because, guys, I got to be honest with you. The thing I hate more than anything else is people who are being weaselly and disingenuous. It's one thing to have honest disagreements, and there's plenty of people out there who disagree with me ideologically who I would say they're honest actors. And they mean what they say, and they're telling the truth as they see it, right? That's not the case with Tucker. It's just not. I've never seen a more clear contradiction between what he says privately his views are and then what he says publicly. I don't know why anybody would take any word he says seriously after that. Unfortunately, we didn't get a question on that. That's a damn shame. But we did get this interesting moment that I want to share where Sagar brings up Ben Shapiro and Tucker effectively weighs in and is like, I don't think he cares about America at all. I think he puts Israel above America. So this is really interesting. Let's watch and then we'll break it down.
I did think it showed the level of not just corruption, which I knew, but of emotional instability and craziness. I mean, there are people, and I stopped reading any of it, but there are people on the right who have spent the last 2 months every single day focused on a conflict in a foreign country as our own country becomes dangerously unstable on the brink of financial collapse with tens of millions of people who shouldn't be here in the country. We don't know their identities or the purpose of their being here. Stuff that's could destroy the country for real and make it impossible for my kids to live here. They've said nothing about that, and they're focused with laser intensity on foreign conflicts.
Now, let me just pause real quick to jump in and say, I don't think people are wrong to focus on Israel and Gaza. It makes sense to focus on Israel and Gaza. We've watched over 30,000 Palestinians be killed, including over 11,000 children. So you should focus on it. The difference is you shouldn't focus on it the way these neocon right-wingers do, which is yes, more violence, more destruction, more death, more ethnic cleansing, yes! The problem is not that they focus on it. The problem is how they focus on it. In fact, people should be focused on it, but they should be focused on it from the perspective of, hold on, I thought we said never again. I thought we said, genocide is the most obvious immoral thing of all time. I thought that's what we said. Hey, Israel, can you please stop bombing hospitals and schools and businesses and UN buildings and mosques and churches and markets and literally every kind of civilian infrastructure imaginable? Can you please stop stripping innocent Palestinians down to their underwear and parading them through the street? Can you please stop torturing people and detaining thousands of political prisoners and hostages with no rights and no trial and no justice? Can you please stop carpet bombing babies? So you should focus on it, but you should focus on it from the perspective of, well, this is the most obvious atrocity in modern day. But look, this is the difference between a paleocon and a lefty, right? The paleocon is an isolationist when it comes to foreign policy. And isolationism basically comes hand in hand with the argument I just don't care about the rest of the world. I care about us. In theory, I care about us. That's paleoconservatism. That's an isolationist foreign policy. I don't care about the rest of the world. I care about us. The left-wing foreign policy is, I care about us, but of course I also care about atrocities or injustices or immoral acts or unethical acts across the world. Especially when, in the case of Israel, we happen to be arming them and funding them as they commit a genocide. So that is directly on us. You should care about that. You should not be in favor of arming Israel and giving them weapons and it being their little cuck at the UN where we do whatever the hell they want to block any sort of accountability or justice. So the lefty foreign policy is, yeah, we care about the United States first and foremost, of course, but also the rest of the world matters too, and we should use whatever power and influence we have for better outcomes for everybody, right? So I would call paleoconservatism isolationist. I would call a lefty foreign policy a non-interventionist, which is different. Always rely on diplomacy and negotiation and peace talks and soft power, and use that to guide the world towards moral ends, to uphold international law. Unfortunately, we have the worst of all worlds. We're not isolationists. We're not non-interventionists. We are just neoconservative and interventionists, where it's like, we'll get involved in these conflicts, but we'll get involved on the wrong side if they happen to be our ally, and we'll arm and fund a genocide. Anyway, sorry to cut him off. Let's continue.
They've said nothing about that, and they're focused with laser intensity on foreign conflicts. And I'm like, at some point, I've got 4 kids. If I'm so caught up in the problems of my neighbor's children and completely ignoring my own children as they get addicted to drugs and kill themselves, I'm not against helping my neighbor's kids, but clearly I don't love my kids. I mean, that's the only logical conclusion, and they don't care about the country at all. And that's kind of their prerogative, but I do, because I have no choice, because I'm from here, my family's been here hundreds of years, I plan to stay here. Like, I'm shocked by how little they care about the country, and including the person you mentioned. And I can't imagine how someone like that could get an audience of people who claim to care about America, because he doesn't, obviously.
So his point is, look, he said it. I don't even need to paraphrase it here, but he's like, I don't think Ben really cares about America. I don't think he does. And the implication is he cares more about Israel than he cares about America. So, look, I will say this. I would bet quite a bit of money Ben Shapiro responds to this, and Ben Shapiro calls Tucker anti-Semitic. That would be my guess. I'm almost certain that will happen. Now, by the way, what's my take on it? Do I think Ben cares about America? I do. Do I think he cares about Israel? Oh, I do. I think he probably cares about them both equally, to be honest with you. Although there was a tweet where he said, like, I would vote for Netanyahu to be president of the U.S., which is like, oh, man, you're really giving Tucker some ammunition with something like that. Look, I think he cares about both, but I think he's just wrong. So from Ben's perspective, he would say, look, you should care about Hamas. You should care about what's happening in Israel, because he believes there's a clash of civilizations, and we have the enlightened, Western perspective, where we are educated, civilized men who have brought enlightenment and science and all these positive things to the world, and we're against barbarians and savages and Amalek, as Netanyahu would say when he's quoting the Bible. We're against primitive people who only believe in violence, who want to drag us back to a primitive age. They want to cover women up. By the way, so do Orthodox Jewish people. It's not just Muslims that want to, or fundamentalist Muslims that want to cover women up. But like, they're so inferior, they're so primitive. And so there's a clash of civilizations. And if you think this only applies to Israel, well, you're wrong, because we're also at war. He would say against like Hamas and Hezbollah and Iran, which honestly is just stupid. To the extent there is any sort of conflict here, of course, it would be more the U.S. versus Al-Qaeda or ISIS, who are actual global jihadists. Whereas when you talk about Hamas, they're not global jihadists. They want a Palestinian state, right? So totally different. It's like a regional issue versus a global issue, right? But this is the argument that Ben makes. And so look, I think he cares about the U.S. I just think he happens to be wrong on basically every single policy issue. I think he's wrong on deregulation. I think he's wrong on tax cuts for the rich. I think he's wrong about destroying the administrative and regulatory state. I think he's wrong about foreign policy, where he wants the U.S. to be the world's sole superpower and enforce justice everywhere. Problem is, it's his version of justice. And his version of justice is a cartoon version of justice, where like we're Superman and they're evil. Or like we're Batman and our enemies are the Joker or Two-Face or whatever other, I don't know superhero stuff that well. But like in his worldview, we're the good guys and Israel's the good guys and everybody else is the bad guys. And look, keep it real. It's a childish view. It's a simpleton's view of the world, which is ironic because he fancies himself like, this big head intellectual. But look, I think he cares. I think he cares about the U.S. I think he cares about Israel. He probably cares about them roughly equally. But he's just wrong, right? He's just wrong. So when I look at Tucker, I mean, look, I have to say, I'm not a fan of these kinds of arguments. I'm not. Because it's like, it's a way to just dismiss the point without really addressing it, right? Because again, by the way, Tucker's wrong on this stuff too. He's just wrong in a different way. How many times have we heard paleoconservatives say, bro, we don't have money to send Ukraine. We got our own problems here. We got the border crisis. We got homelessness. Bro, we don't want to send any money to Israel. We got our own problems here. We got border crisis and homelessness and poverty and this and that. And then a lefty steps in and says, okay, let's do a program to end homelessness. And they go, fuck off, pull yourself up by your bootstraps. So, like, it's not really a sincere argument from Tucker. It's not really a sincere argument from paleoconservatives. Bro, we got our own problems. We got to take care of that. Okay, here's a bill to address our own problems and do a universal basic income program or do a universal housing program or do Medicare for all and universal health care. And those same people turn around and go, I'm not in favor of those things. That's socialism. So then don't use the argument, hey, we can't give foreign aid because we got to take care of our people. The fact of the matter is you don't want to give foreign aid or take care of our people. You don't want to do either one. So just be honest and say that up front, right? Again, Tucker's perspective is not the genocide of Palestinians is wrong. His stance is, I don't care. And that's their problem. Let the Israelis handle it however they want to handle it. They want to wipe them all off? By all means, go ahead. That's also a morally depraved position. Ben's position is morally depraved in the sense that he supports the genocide and the massacre, and he wants more U.S. money and weapons going to it. Tucker's position is slightly less depraved, but still depraved in the sense that he says, Israel, you do whatever you want. I got no opinion one way or the other, and we just don't want to fund you. And I'll virtue signal and pretend like I want to spend that money here to help our own people, but then when somebody proposes a bill to actually do that, I'll go, I don't want to do that. That's socialism. So they're both wrong. But again, I never like the argument, oh, you just hate America. Because people say that to the left all the time, and it's like, you're obviously wrong. The obvious point is, we do care about America, we just want to make it better in a different way than you want to make it better. We disagree. I think your ideas are bad for the country. You think my ideas are bad for the country. But I'm willing to grant people, even people I disagree with, the bare minimum level of charitability that it's like they care about the country. They just disagree as to what policies would bring about that outcome. And Ben happens to think doing genocide of Palestinians would bring about a better outcome. Of course, he would say it's not a genocide, but, you know, he's got shit for brains, so who cares what he says on that. But, yeah, I'm not a fan of this argument from Tucker. But, of course, I understand why he would say it, right? Because Ben does seem to talk about Israel, care about Israel. First and foremost, in terms of his coverage recently, it's all, you know, rah, rah, Israel, Israel awesome. And Palestinians are all terrorists and impossible to deal with and blah, 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 as Israel wipes Palestinians off the map. So, but again, I'll conclude on this to reiterate the point. I think Ben does care about America. He's just wrong about everything. I think he does care about Israel, probably equal amount. But I do find these arguments kind of hollow from the likes of Tucker because the paleoconservative position is not persuasive to me. The paleoconservative position is, let Israel do whatever it wants. We just don't want to be involved. I don't want to let Israel do whatever it wants, whether or not we're involved. And, oh, let's take care of our own problems here at home. We got so many. Why are we sending all this money abroad when we need to take care of our stuff here at home? But then when you propose actually taking care of stuff here at home, he's like, I don't want to do that. That's socialism. Okay. All right. Well, there you have it. I'm looking forward to Ben's reaction where he undoubtedly will call Tucker anti-Semitic. That should be fun. Let's let this feud heat up more and more. Hey, y'all, do me a favor and like and subscribe. It helps out big time in the algorithm. Click the bell as well for notifications when videos drop. And watch that video on screen right now. You know you want to.